Good day everyone. Today I have another computer to show you. This is an Acer Aspire E380 made in early 2007. I got this thing from school. The technology shop had put it out in the hallway up for grabs for anyone to take, so I grabbed it. And you may remember I did make a video of this thing the day I got it, because I had no idea if it worked or not, so I just brought it home, plugged it in to see if it worked, and once I discovered that my monitor cable had fallen out of the TV, I discovered that this thing works just fine. And indeed, since I've prepared it for this video, I can tell you that this thing works absolutely perfect, which is awesome, and it is a very nice running computer. So this is an early Vista era machine. It shipped with Windows Vista Home Premium. And this computer is powered by an AMD Athlon 64 X2 processor, dual core 64-bit processor, third generation AMD Athlon 64 X2. This CPU competed with the first generation Intel Core 2 Duo, the ones based on the Conroe core. And it's the 4200 plus model, 2.2 gigahertz. So very nice. It's so funny how computers of this caliber, you know, the early 64-bit dual-core machines, can be garbage picked now for free. Nobody wants them anymore, even though they're still very good, very capable computers. Well, the better for me, I guess. This thing has 2 gigabytes of RAM. It's DDR2 RAM, and it is the original RAM that is shipped with, 2 gigabytes, which is very nice for the time. A lot of Vista machines just shipped with 1 gigabyte of RAM, so this thing was quite well equipped. It did originally ship with a 250 gigabyte SATA hard drive. It was gone when I picked this up, no surprise. So the hard drive I have put in this is a 40 gigabyte SATA hard drive. It's the hard drive that came in that IBM ThinkCentre I got that turned out to have a bad motherboard. So that's a SATA hard drive, so I stuck it in this, and it works just fine. And you may remember, if you watched the last video, the DVD RW drive that was in this did not like to open. It needs a new belt. I still have it sidelined. I gotta get a belt sometime. I bought some belts on eBay. It turned out I bought a size too large, and they're no good to me. $4 wasted. So not the smartest purchase I ever made, but oh well. But I did actually get a hold of another drive, which I put in here. The school was also getting rid of a DVD-RW drive, and it was actually put in a recycle box, and I figure, sheesh, you know, presumably the drive's no good if they're getting rid of it. Nah, it works absolutely perfect. A perfectly good drive. And yeah, DVD-RW dual layer. Oh man. Yeah, and it's a perfect working drive. It works great. So I was very happy to find that. Almost all of my, I think all of my desktop computers now, Pentium 3 and above, all have DVD-RW drives now, which is great. In here is blank. I'll say one thing. One of the things I hate most about consumer-grade desktop computers is these decorative doors that they have over the drives. Because once an optical drive starts getting old and, you know, the belt starts drying up, so it's harder to open, sometimes the drive will be hard to open because it's got to push this door open. And if you look at this thing, if you see me manipulate it with my finger here, there's a point at which there's a lot of resistance, and you gotta, whoops, I broke it, and you gotta push down quite hard to get it to open. And likewise, when it goes to close, it's gonna go over these bumps as well, and once the drive starts getting a bit weak to open and close, they can sometimes not get these things open and closed. And yeah, I really don't like this design. I wish they just had a blank, just a blank opening like business class computers do. Power button, hard drive activity LED, and a network activity LED, which I quite like. They're all bright blue blinding LEDs. I hate blue LEDs. They'd look nice if they weren't as bright as a million suns. So there's a sticker here. There's the full model number of this thing. 9-in-1 card reader. Where is it? Well, if you push this door down, it's a bit stiff. There. You get 4 USB ports, USB 2.0, analog audio. Look at this, FireWire. This thing has onboard FireWire, which is fantastic. And a card reader. A full array of card slots here. Smart Media, XD card, compact flash, and micro drive. This will accept a micro drive. SD card as well as multimedia card. And memory stick as well as memory stick pro. Sweet. And here's something that if you look back on the first video I made of this thing, you did not see, and I didn't know it was a thing until I looked on Google Images and found another picture of this computer. Right here is supposed to be a blue Aspire logo that lights up when the computer's on. It's a little cutout in the plastic that you normally can't see. I wonder if I could see it with night shot. Yeah, you can. How about that? So you can see there an Aspire logo, and it's backlit with blue LEDs. But you can see if you look back at the last video, it wasn't working on this computer. Well, it is working now. The problem was very odd. I've never seen this happen before. Both the LEDs were just straight up burned out. They did not work. They had just failed. There's 2 LEDs behind the logo, and they both failed, just burned out, which I've never seen that before. I've only seen it maybe once happen to an LED like that. So what I did was actually really cool. I took the LEDs, I managed to remove the LEDs. They were just glued in place. They're just standard, just standard through-hole LEDs. I forget what the size is called, 5mm maybe, but just the standard garden variety LEDs. I removed them and I replaced them with red LEDs. And so now, and it works just fine, so now when this thing's running, you get the red Aspire logo down here, and it looks so cool. I like it a lot. Very nice, accented with the rest of the blue LEDs on here. Nice big red Aspire logo. I really like it a lot. I think if I was bolder, I would have gone one step further. I would have tried to find some grain of wheat incandescent bulbs to use instead, but I went for the quick fix. I had some red LEDs on hand, but it looks really nice. Quite pleased with it. Let's turn it around here. Info sticker, made in China. Down there is the original Windows Vista Home Premium license. I will keep it for myself just in case. And some more info here. There's the manufacturing date. Is that January 9th or September 1st? We will never know. And that's why I hate date codes like this. Although I'm kind of a hypocrite because I write dates like this as well. But I know how I do it. I always do the month / the date / the year. But there's no telling if that's January 9th or September 1st, which I would have liked to know, because that would tell me whether this is a really early Vista machine or a Vista machine from when Vista was well into its life cycle. Because Vista only went RTM in January 2007. And it was released to OEMs just a few months before that. So if that's January 9th, that makes this thing a really early Vista machine. Back when a lot of computers were still shipping with XP. Let's take a look around the back. This is an ATX standard system. That's a standard ATX power supply. Very nice. You have a case fan right here. We have some weird stuff right here. I think that's digital audio out. Although I really know nothing about digital audio systems, so I couldn't tell you for sure. But I do know that's an optical audio output. When the computer's on, you can see it glow red, which that's really neat. I've never seen a computer with an optical audio output before. It's such a niche thing. I think optical audio was only a thing that like home theater systems and satellite receivers and stuff were equipped with for only like a couple of years, and then it just died out because nobody used it. So very interesting to see. Looking here, what's very nice, we have a full array of legacy ports. PS2 keyboard and mouse, serial port, parallel port, VGA, Firewire, again, full-size Firewire port on the back, 4 more USB ports, 100 megabit Ethernet, and a full array of analog audio, surround sound and all that jazz. There was a modem in here. I pulled it to put in another computer that I'm gonna try and get rid of. And that's it. So let's look inside it now. Oh, something oh well, turn around more here. It's got this big vent in the case here. Looking at other pictures of this thing, and I think it might have been the service manual I looked at actually, it showed a big hood extending from the CPU fan all the way against this wall. A big tube, and that's gone in this machine, so I don't know if somebody removed it or if this just never had it. But if you look in there, yeah, you can see the CPU fan back there. So that makes this thing a little bit noisy because it's so open with this huge vent. Now, something, part of the design I find really intriguing. This is a big rubber mat. Just a straight up big thick rubber mat on the top here. I don't know if it was meant for a specific purpose or just a design feature, but it's very interesting nonetheless. So let's take a look at the back, or the inside I mean. So to get inside, this thing actually has toolless case entry. You've got 2 places to put screws, but this never had screws in it. But it has this lever here, and you push that, and then you can pull the lid off. It's a little interlock. Oops, banged up my handy cam there. So the lid comes off, and you're inside. This thing has a pretty nice case. It's quite well built for a consumer computer of this era. And, you know, I've seen computer cases from around this time period that had just the flimsiest metal. But this thing's actually quite nice. The metal is quite thick. And it's got some little, like if you look right there, it's got some structural members going across. So it's a very nice case. One of the nicest computer consumer grade cases I've seen. And it's almost completely toolless. That's really cool. This is a very nice case. I wouldn't have expected this from Acer. I've always known Acer to make some pretty darn cheap stuff, but this computer is quite nice. So let's see what we got here. There's the hard drive I put in, a 40 gigabyte SATA hard drive. And yeah, they did make SATA hard drives this small. It's a SATA 1 hard drive, obviously, but it works just fine. And there's the DVD-ROM drive. It is IDE. That goes right in here. This thing has, I forget if this has one. This has just the one IDE port, but it does have a floppy port, which is very nice. So something I'd like to do is, it's got this blank right here. I could remove this and put a floppy drive in its place. Although I don't think it has, oh yes it does. It has a floppy connector right there. So yeah, I could put a floppy drive in this, and I will definitely do that whenever I get the chance. There's the power supply. It is it's a 300 watt power supply. Oh, you might have noticed this down here. I stuck my 2 1 terabyte backup drives in here. This computer, again, a really nice feature of this thing for a consumer computer. This has hardware RAID. It has a hardware RAID controller, and it can be accessed from the BIOS, and it can also be accessed from Windows. This thing has an NVIDIA chipset in it. It's just so nice. This was a really nicely equipped computer. I would say this must have been a mid-range, if not even high-end system for the time. But yeah, it's got an NVIDIA chipset with an inbuilt hardware RAID controller. That's really nice. So I have actually learned how to use it. I've never used RAID before. I had a lot of trouble trying to figure it out, but I got it in the end. And I now have my 1 terabyte backup drives in a true RAID 1 mirrored array. So that's very nice. So this computer serves a very important purpose now. It hosts my my backup hard drives. Very good. The card reader connects to an internal USB port on the motherboard, right down there. And there's our CPU. It's a socket AM2. 4 RAM slots with our 2 gigs of RAM inserted. Our SATA ports are down there. There are 4 SATA ports total. Very nice. And I had to change the CMOS battery. It was dead. PCI Express X16 slot. This would be PCI Express version 1.0. PCI Express X1. And 2 PCI slots. And there's your chipset heatsink right there. So yes, very, very, very nicely equipped system. Very nice for the time. And it's all toolless, and it's got a really good quality case. It's just, I've been overwhelmingly surprised by how nice quality this machine is. Really, really nice. And when you add expansion cards, that's toolless as well. There's no screws. You lift up this tab here, and this plastic brace springs off, and you add your cards, and then you just clip it back on, and it keeps the cards in place. I think that's all I wanted to show in here. I will put it back together, set it up over there, and we will power this thing on. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention. Originally, the CPU fan was kind of stiff. I took it off to oil it. I've oiled many CPU fans before. They're all the same. On the underside, the part of the hub that doesn't spin, you remove the sticker, and underneath the sticker is a rubber plug, and you pull that, and that gets you access to the bearing, and you just drip some oil into the bearing and freeze them right up. Well, this is the first fan I've ever seen. It has nothing like that. I took the fan off, flipped it over. There was no sticker. There was no rubber plug, but there was what looked like a plastic cover. And I couldn't get this plastic cover off, and I took a knife and tried to pry it off, and eventually I just, I knifed it enough that it just kind of ripped off. And but underneath it, rather than just a normal open bearing, you could see you could see like the center part of the bearing, like the pin, and but it was just totally surrounded with solid plastic, and I couldn't oil it properly, and I had to take a knife and just dig out the solid plastic, and then I could oil the bearing, and it worked. But now this thing, like, when the computer's horizontal like this, the fan does not spin well anymore, but it spins fine when it's vertical. And also when the computer's like this, when the fan spins, when the computer's on, it makes a friction noise. So I really messed up the bearing, I think, just trying to gain access to it. But I did oil it, and now when the computer's vertical, the fan does spin freely, more so than when I first got the computer. Alright, so I've got it all hooked up here. So I decided to put Windows XP on this thing because I've already got, a more powerful computer than this running Windows 7, and I don't need another Windows 7 machine, but I would like a really kick-butt Windows XP machine, and this thing has really fit the bill. This thing just flies with Windows XP. It really is enjoyable to use. This thing has a good amount of power. The processor has, according to the Passmark benchmark listing, the CPU has about 1.5 times more processing power than the ThinkPad, which is what I compare every computer to. So it's very nice. Of course, the graphics are a bit lackluster, so high-definition YouTube video does not play quite as smoothly as on the ThinkPad, because the ThinkPad's got really powerful graphics on it, whereas this thing's quite lackluster. But it is NVIDIA graphics, rather than just Intel or VIA or whatever, which is very nice. So yes, I decided to put Windows XP on this thing. It was a bit of a challenge to get Windows XP on this. First of all, I discovered that in order to use the RAID controller, you had to set the SATA controller from ATA mode into AHCI mode. A lot of computers have this setting. ATA mode is the mode in which the SATA controller emulates an IDE controller. So to the operating system, it just looks like an IDE controller. But the AHCI mode is when it actually behaves like a SATA controller and supports all the SATA commands and stuff. I am not sure if it improves performance over the ATA mode. I cannot find any concrete answer to that, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does improve performance a little bit. But yeah, I had to put this thing into AHCI mode in order to enable the RAID controller, which meant I had to reinstall Windows XP, because when you change the hard drive controller on an operating system, that's it. It kills off the operating system, and it ain't going to work again until you reinstall it. There might be a way to reinstall the controller driver and not have to reinstall the operating system, but I couldn't figure out. If there was a way, I couldn't find it, so I just had to reinstall Windows XP. And this is where the challenge started, because Windows XP supports very few SATA controllers natively. When you put the SATA controller in ATA mode, Windows XP is fine with it. It sees it just as a normal IDE controller. But once it's in AHCI mode, Windows XP needs a driver to talk to the SATA controller. Or else when the Windows XP setup starts, it just says it can't find any hard drives. This is a challenge. Windows XP supports very few SATA controllers. Well, SATA didn't even exist when Windows XP debuted. I'm not sure. The Windows XP CD I use has Service Pack 3 integrated. I don't know if that added any built-in SATA drivers or what. But regardless, I had to find a Windows XP SATA driver for this thing, which I had no problem finding, but then I had to integrate it into the into a CD-ROM image, because for Windows XP to be able to use a SATA driver in the installation, it can only be either built in or loaded from floppy disk. Windows XP setup does not support loading drivers from CD-ROM, only from floppy disk, and this thing doesn't have a floppy drive. And I said, well, that's no good. So what I had to do was I had to figure out how to slipstream the driver into the Windows XP CD image. I made an image from my CD-ROM that I have, and I slipstreamed the driver into that. Figured out how to do it using an online guide, and it worked. So I managed to get XP installed on this with the SATA driver, and it worked just fine. But then I had to reinstall it again, and the reason I had to do that was, well, I got the SATA controller into AHCI mode, but then it turns out in order to put my 1 terabyte backup drives in a RAID array, the normal OS drive, the 40 gigabyte drive, that has to be placed into a RAID array as well. You can't put some hard drives in a RAID array and just have other drives not. Everything has to be in a RAID array. So what I had to do was mirror my 1 terabyte drives and then set my 40 gigabyte drive as a JBOD disk. JBOD stands for just a bunch of disks, which basically means a JBOD array is just an array in which all the drives function independently as normal. But it turns out that if you have an independent drive that you don't want in an array, you still got to put it in an array. You have to put it in a JBOD array all by itself, which is kind of strange. So then I had to do that, and when you put a hard disk with an operating system on it into a RAID array, that also kills the operating system. The operating system doesn't know how to talk to the drive anymore, because now it has to communicate with the RAID controller. So I had to reinstall Windows XP again, and luckily I didn't have to slipstream any more drivers. So in the end, I got everything all set up. It was kind of a pain in the butt, But it all works in the end, and I've learned some new things in the process. That's very nice. My knowledge on modern computers, you guys may guess, is very, very sparse. You know, all of 90% of my computer knowledge is with stuff dating from the mid-90s to the early 2000s. Stuff before and after that, I just don't have a good working knowledge of. In fact, I have a better knowledge of computers from like the 80s than I do of computers from like the late 2000s and later. So it's been good to be able to learn this sort of stuff, and I'll no doubt make use of it later. So I'll power this thing on, and take a look at that logo that I've retrofitted with red LEDs. It'd be good if I plug this thing in. Okay. Look at that. Does that look cool or what? I really like it. You just heard the optical drive there. The bearings are kind of chunky in it, so it makes kind of a farting noise when you turn the thing on. There it is, JBOD mirror. The JBOD is the 40 gigabyte OS drive. And the mirror is my 1 terabyte backup drives in a RAID 1 array. And this is a peppy machine under Windows XP. It just flies. It's really enjoyable to use. I think the bottleneck would be the hard drive. The hard drive does seem very slow. When you load a large program, the hard drive does a lot of thrashing, even though it's defragged and everything. I think it's just a really slow hard drive. But the computer is by no means slow. It's very nice to use. It's got a lot of power for a Windows XP machine. It's nice to use on the internet. No problem whatsoever. Boots up quite quickly though. And this is the Realtek audio thing, because it recognizes that I've plugged the TV speakers into it. My mouse isn't working. Oops, it wasn't plugged in. There. Now, do we have sound? I didn't hear the startup sound. Perhaps my TV speakers are turned down. Oh yeah, I hear it. Okay, so there is a second purpose I've given this computer. It is now my video capture machine. The video I record with my high 8 camcorder and my digital 8 camcorders, because this thing has onboard FireWire, it gets used for video capture now, which is very nice. So I have WinDV installed. I'd never used it before. I've always used the Sony Vegas capture program, but when I saw V Westlife use WinDV, figured I'd give it a shot, and I like it a lot. It actually works a lot better than the Sony Vegas video capture, and it's a very tiny program. It's only a few megabytes, so it's very nice. And other things I got installed, yeah, I got QuickTime installed. I'm going to make this my music server as well. Well, not really server, but this thing's just going to hold all my music, which is currently sitting on the ThinkPad. Two reasons. First of all, I'll let my music reside on the backup array, so it'll be safe there. And yeah, and because I do want my music to be backed up, but rather than have it on both this thing and my ThinkPad, when I normally just use my iPod to listen to music, I'll just keep the music on this and free up a few gigs on the ThinkPad and just plug my iPod into this to sync it. So I have QuickTime installed. Well, I need iTunes. I don't have iTunes installed, but I'll be doing that at some point. I do have Sony Vegas installed. I did it because I had a video that I'm currently filming where I have an hour and a half of raw unedited footage, and I didn't want to move it all over to the ThinkPad to look at it, because I had to look for something in it just quickly. So I just installed Vegas on here and looked at it in that, and this thing runs Vegas really well. It's quite fluid for editing standard definition video. I've got Microsoft Office 2003 installed just for the heck of it. Here's the NVIDIA control panel. Now, here's something that's been really annoying me. Watch this when I right-click on something. Well, okay, not that. Oh, okay, it hasn't even loaded the driver. When I installed Windows on this thing, it automatically went on Windows Update and downloaded the NVIDIA driver. In the NVIDIA drivers, this big whole suite of software. It's got the graphics driver and the NVIDIA control panel and the RAID driver. And it's good to have because I use the RAID software for managing the RAID array. But the thing is, Windows will go and install it and it'll work great. But then once it's installed, the program itself updates itself to the latest version. And the latest version, unsurprisingly, does not support the old chipset in this computer. So the program automatically updates itself to an incompatible version and it quits working. And then I gotta go to Windows Update and reinstall the version that does work, and then it'll automatically update itself again. So I've got to figure out if there's a way to stop it from doing that, because it's really annoying. Kind of odd it hasn't loaded into the system tray. Normally it does. See if it'll work here when I open it up. Oh, I heard the error beep like 10 times. And nothing. Okay, that's weird. Oh, there we go. This is the error it gives when you right click on stuff. The NVIDIA display panel extension cannot be created. Reasons include version mismatch. Yeah, because it automatically updates itself and breaks itself. I wonder if the storage program will open at least. Nope. Yeah, so that's really annoying, so I've got to figure out how to fix that. Oh well. Let's open CPU-Z. Take a look at the processor's specs here. I've never owned a computer with an AMD Athlon 64. My mother does though. Her laptop has an AMD Athlon 2 X2. So there's everything there. .2 gigahertz. NVIDIA chipset. Phoenix BIOS. It's a nice BIOS. It's well, I guess you saw it in the last video. I talked about how nice the BIOS was. It has a monitoring program and everything. 2 gigs of RAM, which I think is a perfect amount for a Windows XP machine. You'd have to be doing an awful lot to need more than that. Yeah, it's got identical... Wow, look at this. The serial number of the first stick of RAM is 2002. The serial number of the second stick of RAM, 2001. This thing got 2 consecutive sticks of RAM off the factory line. That's very impressive. That's very cool. Week 34 of 2006. 1 serial number apart. That's very cool. Hyundai Electronics RAM. Graphics. An NVIDIA GeForce 6150 SE. And the chipset's called the Enforce 430. Cool, cool, cool. Well, that's CPU-Z. What else we got on here? Google Chrome. I can surf the internet no issue on this thing. And yeah, that's it. So that's what I got on this thing. The main reason I use this thing is first of all to host my backup drives. Second of all, to serve as FireWire DV video capture. Oh, and you'll see that I have Skype installed on here. I have made a Skype call on this thing, and what's so cool is, see, I have 2 laptops with webcams, and they both suck horribly. The webcams on them suck, and the microphones on them suck. So what I can do with this thing, with Skype, is because it has FireWire and because it's running Windows XP, I can hook my Digital 8 Handycam up to the FireWire and use it as a webcam. And I tried that for a Skype call I made to a friend and it just worked wonderfully. The video quality and the audio quality, which it got from the built-in microphone, was just fantastic. It was just great. So yeah, this works great for Skype calls. And really, that's about it. I'll open up Prime 95. This thing gets quite noisy when it gets hot. And I'll open up Speed Fan as well. And we'll do the maximum heat test. Fan speeding up already. This thing never gets hotter than about 65 degrees, so it runs quite cool. But the fan runs at full tilt when it gets to 65 degrees. You do get the CPU fan and case fan speeds, but you cannot control them. You can see it getting, or you can hear it getting faster and faster. That's almost full tilt. So I'll shut that down. Ah, we've got updates. Excellent. Windows XP still getting updates until 2019. So you can't, the naysayers can't argue against that. So I'll let it install that. There, and it says we have to restart, so I'll just go ahead and, well, I guess I'll restart it. So there you go, that's pretty much all there is to show of the Acer Aspire E380 desktop PC from, I'm going to guess January 2007, since the RAM's dated 2006. So a very early Vista machine, like a first generation Windows Vista machine. A very nice computer though, very, I'd say almost high-end for the time. The quality of it's just surprising for a desktop computer, and the features it has is just great. And an inbuilt RAID controller and an NVIDIA chipset. Yeah, this thing's pretty darn nice. So I'm glad I got a hold of it, and it's served me very well so far, and I hope it'll continue to be very useful to me. It's a very nice machine. So there you go. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you later.